Nobody was ready for this. Not the fans. Not the blogs. Not even the people who helped ignite the fire. Because in the span of a single night, Tamar Braxton went from trending for music and family drama to being dragged into one of the most brutal, invasive, and dangerous rumor storms the internet has seen in years. Screenshots started flying. Clips were chopped, reposted, weaponized. Names like Funky Dineva and Mendeecees were suddenly everywhere, tied to whispers that should have never left private conversations. And then came the moment that made everyone freeze. Tamar herself, visibly shaken, emotionally unraveling, as the weight of the accusations crashed down on her all at once. This wasn't just gossip. This wasn't shade. This crossed into something darker. Something reckless. Something that doesn't wash off once it's thrown into the public. Twitter Spaces exploded. TikTok lives went off the rails. Comment sections turned feral. Some people demanded answers. Others demanded blood. And in the middle of it all was Tamar, forced to relive old trauma, old betrayals, and a level of public humiliation that no celebrity, no woman, should ever be subjected to. What started as just talk spiraled into alleged confirmations, half-statements, and viral soundbites taken wildly out of context. Fans watched in real time as Tamar's name was dragged through speculation so personal, so invasive, that even longtime supporters went silent in shock. And the scariest part? Once rumors like this are released, they don't need proof to destroy someone's peace. They just need attention. Because behind the trending hashtags and reaction videos, there's one question nobody wants to answer out loud. Who had the right to say any of this at all? The chaos didn't begin with proof. It began with whispers. The kind that slither through timelines late at night, dressed up as inside tea, passed from one live stream to another until the original source becomes impossible to trace. 1 minute, Tamar Braxton's name was trending for something harmless. The next, it was attached to accusations so personal, so invasive, that even seasoned gossip veterans paused before hitting repost. And that pause didn't last long. Because once Funky Dineva's name and Mendeecees' name were dragged into the same sentence as Tamar's, the internet went into a feeding frenzy that didn't care about facts, context, or consequences. What people need to understand is this: nothing was confirmed. Nothing was proven. What exploded online were allegations, insinuations, and reckless commentary presented with the confidence of truth, but without the burden of evidence. Yet the way it was framed made it feel final, like a verdict handed down by social media before anyone could even breathe. Clips were stitched out of order. Old interviews were dragged back up with brand new captions that completely twisted their meaning. Statements about films, friendships, and casual industry connections were suddenly rebranded as receipts, even though none of them actually proved anything at all. And while all of this was happening, Tamar was not laughing it off. She wasn't clapping back. She wasn't doing what the internet expects her to do. According to people close to her, she was spiraling. Not because of guilt, but because of violation. Because there is a difference between being criticized for your behavior and having your body, your health, and your dignity turned into clickbait. Sources say Tamar was blindsided by how quickly the narrative escalated, especially when commentary crossed a line that should never be crossed under any circumstance. Speculating about someone's medical status. That's when the tone shifted. Fans who had been watching for entertainment suddenly felt uncomfortable. This wasn't messy reality TV drama anymore. This was dangerous territory. The kind of territory that ruins lives even when it's false. And that's when Tamar allegedly broke down behind closed doors, furious and hurt that people who knew better were speaking so loosely, so recklessly, about something that should never be used as ammunition in a public feud. Behind the scenes, phones were ringing non-stop. friends, family, attorneys. According to an insider, Tamar kept asking the same question over and over. How did it get this far? Because the original situation, whatever personal tension or misunderstanding existed, was never about health. It was about boundaries, respect, and betrayal. But once certain voices decided to hint instead of speak responsibly, the internet filled in the blanks with its ugliest assumptions. And here's the part people don't want to admit. Even suggesting something like this about someone, without proof, without consent, without confirmation, is a form of violence. It stigmatizes. It humiliates. It invites cruelty disguised as curiosity. And Tamar knows that better than most, because her life has already been defined by public breakdowns, public judgment, and public trauma. This rumor didn't just reopen wounds. It poured salt into them. Meanwhile, reaction videos multiplied by the hour. Some creators pretended to be concerned, while replaying the same clips again and again for views. Others leaned into shock value, speaking with certainty about things they had no business claiming. And then there were the fans who pushed back hard, calling out the hypocrisy, the lack of proof, and the sheer irresponsibility of turning someone's alleged health into entertainment. What made it worse was the silence. Not from Tamar, because no one should be forced to respond to lies, but from the people whose words helped spark the fire. No clear retractions. No accountability. Just vague statements and deflections that left the public confused and angry. And in that vacuum, the rumors grew fangs. According to someone close to Tamar, the emotional toll was immediate and severe. Sleepless nights. Panic. Anger mixed with disbelief. She reportedly felt betrayed not just by commentators, but by the culture that rewards this kind of recklessness. They know better, the source said. And they still did it. As the night wore on, one thing became clear. This wasn't about truth. It was about power. About who gets to speak loudly without consequences, and who is expected to absorb the damage quietly. Tamar didn't choose this narrative. It was thrust on her, amplified by algorithms that don't care who gets hurt as long as engagement goes up. And just when people thought the situation couldn't get more volatile, private messages allegedly started leaking. Screenshots of group chats where people debated whether to go further or pull back. Voice notes where hesitation was clear, but momentum was already out of control. The machine had started, and nobody knew how to stop it. The most chilling part. According to insiders, Tamar wasn't even angry at the internet trolls. She expected that. What broke her was realizing how easily respected voices could blur the line between commentary and character assassination, and how quickly the audience would accept it as truth. Because once a rumor like this is released, it doesn't matter how many times it's denied. It sticks. And Tamar knew that. She felt it in real time as her name trended alongside words that should never be used casually, never be weaponized, and never be speculated about for clicks. And as the storm grew louder, one terrifying thought began to circulate quietly among fans and insiders alike. If this much damage could be done without proof, without confirmation, without a single verified fact, what was coming next? By the time the sun came up, the damage was no longer contained to comment sections and reaction videos. It had crossed into real life, and according to multiple insiders, Tamar felt it immediately. Her phone didn't stop vibrating. Calls from friends blurred into calls from publicists. Messages from family sat unread as her team scrambled to understand how a few reckless words spiraled into a full-blown character assassination. What shook her most wasn't just that the rumors were spreading, but how confidently people were repeating them, as if repetition itself had turned speculation into fact. In private, Tamar reportedly kept asking the same question over and over again. How did this become anyone's business? Behind the scenes, tensions exploded. The fallout. The internet doesn't wait for answers. It builds villains in real time. And in this storm, Tamar felt like she was being painted as something she never consented to be. Sources say she broke down after seeing strangers debate her body, her history, and her health like it was entertainment. Not discussion. Entertainment. Social media became a battlefield. Some fans rallied around Tamar, calling the rumors dangerous and irresponsible. Others demanded statements, proof, explanations, as if she owed the public access to her most private realities. TikTok creators went live for hours, speculating wildly, pulling up old interviews, freezing frames, analyzing facial expressions from years ago to prove narratives that never existed before this moment. Twitter Spaces ran all night, with voices talking over each other, accusing, defending, theorizing. Nobody was listening anymore. They were feeding off the chaos. What hurt the most, according to someone close to Tamar, was the silence from people she thought would protect her. No immediate clarifications. No unified pushback. Just distance. That silence felt loud. It felt like abandonment. And when Tamar finally did speak privately to a trusted friend, her words were chilling. She allegedly said, "They don't care if it's true. They care if it trends." That realization hit harder than the rumors themselves. Because once you understand that truth is optional online, the fear changes shape. It's no longer about clearing your name. It's about surviving the lie. Industry reactions only deepened the wound. A few celebrities posted vague messages about protecting privacy and not weaponizing rumors, but never mentioned Tamar by name. Others liked tweets that fans interpreted as subtle shade. Every like, every delete, every cryptic post was dissected as a sign of allegiance. Tamar watched it all unfold, reportedly feeling like she was standing alone in the middle of a collapsing room, while everyone else argued about who knocked over the first wall. Behind closed doors, her family dynamic reportedly cracked under the pressure. Some urged her to issue a firm statement. Others begged her to stay silent, believing the storm would burn itself out. But the storm wasn't slowing. It was evolving. New rumors layered on top of old ones. Misinformation mutated into updates. Reaction channels framed speculation as investigation. And Tamar's emotional state reportedly deteriorated, as she realized this wasn't about correcting a story. It was about reclaiming her humanity in a space that thrives on stripping it away. Then came the moment that shifted everything. According to an insider, Tamar finally watched one particular clip in full, not just the headlines, not just the reactions, but the full context of what had been said about her. When it ended, she didn't scream. She didn't argue. She reportedly went silent, stared at the screen, and whispered, "They knew what this would do." That sentence haunted everyone in the room. Because if that's true, then this wasn't careless. It was calculated. And if it was calculated, then the next move wouldn't be an apology. It would be escalation. As the night closed in again, Tamar retreated from the public eye. No posts. No stories. No clarifications. Just silence. And in celebrity culture, silence is never neutral. It's interpreted as guilt by some, strength by others, strategy by a few. But for Tamar, according to those close to her, it was exhaustion. Emotional, mental, physical exhaustion from being turned into a headline she never agreed to star in. And while the internet refreshed endlessly, waiting for her to break, the question quietly began to shift. What happens when someone finally decides they've had enough? By the third day, the silence wasn't just loud, it was suffocating. Tamar Braxton's absence from social media had become its own headline, dissected just as viciously as the rumors that pushed her there in the first place. Every hour without a post fueled another wave of speculation. Some claimed she was being advised to disappear. Others insisted she was preparing a scorched earth response. A few darker voices whispered that the pressure had finally broken her. And while the internet argued, Tamar was reportedly unraveling in private, finally letting herself feel what she had been forced to suppress since the first clip went viral. According to someone in her inner circle, Tamar reached a breaking point behind closed doors. Not the dramatic kind people expect from reality TV, but the quiet kind, the kind where anger collapses into grief. She allegedly cried not just for herself, but for her child, for her family, for the version of her life that existed before strangers felt entitled to debate her most intimate realities. "They turned my pain into content," she reportedly said, her voice shaking. "And they are still monetizing it." That sentence alone explains why this moment feels different. This wasn't another messy headline. This was a reckoning. As pressure mounted, so did the fractures. Friends began choosing sides publicly, whether they meant to or not. One well-known personality posted a vague message about people needing to stop spreading half-truths, then quickly disabled comments. Another liked a tweet criticizing reckless commentary, only to unlike it minutes later. Screenshots caught everything. Fans treated every digital move like evidence in a trial, assigning guilt and loyalty based on emojis and timing. Tamar watched it all from a distance, reportedly stunned by how quickly compassion evaporated once the algorithm decided a new villain was needed. Meanwhile, the conversation around funky Dineva and Mendeecees intensified, growing sharper and more uncomfortable by the hour. Critics accused them of refusing to fully shut down narratives they helped ignite. Supporters argued they were being misinterpreted. But one thing was undeniable: the damage was already done. Once rumors this personal escape into the wild, walking them back doesn't erase the impact. And Tamar felt that impact everywhere. Sources claim she cancelled meetings, avoided calls, and physically couldn't bring herself to watch new reaction videos dissecting her life like a puzzle. What truly shook her, according to insiders, was realizing how many people were willing to believe the worst without hesitation. Not because of evidence, but because of familiarity. Because audiences think they know Tamar. They've watched her cry, yell, fight, forgive on screen for years. That access blurred the line between entertainer and human, turning her vulnerability into something people felt entitled to invade. Tamar reportedly said, "They think Because they've seen my tears before, they're allowed to cause new ones. That realization cut deeper than any rumor. Behind the scenes, her team debated next steps intensely. Some urged a legal response. Others warned that addressing every lie would only feed the fire. Tamar herself was torn. She wanted to scream, to correct the record, to protect her name. But she also wanted peace. Real peace. And in that conflict, she began questioning who she could trust at all. According to a source, she asked a chilling question during a late-night call. Who benefits from me being destroyed like this? No one had a good answer. The industry's response didn't help. Invitations quietly disappeared. Conversations stalled. The subtle distancing that happens when controversy becomes too messy set in. Tamar felt it immediately. It wasn't overt rejection, it was hesitation. And hesitation, in moments like this, feels like abandonment. She wasn't just fighting rumors anymore. She was fighting erasure. The fear that if she didn't control the narrative soon, it would control her forever. Then, just when it seemed like the story had reached maximum chaos, something unexpected happened. A private message allegedly leaked from someone close to the situation, not naming names, not confirming rumors, but expressing regret. Regret for how far things went. Regret for not stopping it sooner. The message disappeared quickly, but screenshots spread fast. Fans latched onto it immediately. Was this an apology? A confession? Or just damage control? Tamar reportedly saw it and broke down again, not out of relief, but frustration. Because remorse after destruction doesn't rebuild what's already been burned. Late that night, Tamar finally spoke, not publicly, not in a press release, but in a raw, emotional conversation with someone she trusts deeply. According to that person, Tamar said something that reframed everything. "I've survived worse than this," she said quietly. "But I've never been betrayed this loudly." That sentence landed like a punch. Because betrayal was the thread running through every layer of this story. Betrayal by people who spoke too freely. Betrayal by systems that reward controversy over care. Betrayal by an audience that forgets celebrities bleed too. And then came the decision. The one nobody saw coming. Tamar reportedly decided she would not disappear, but she also would not play the game the internet expected. No messy clapbacks. No emotional Instagram live breakdown. No feeding the cycle. Instead, she would choose her moment. Choose her words. Choose the truth she was willing to share on her terms. That decision terrified the people around her, because silence with intention is far more dangerous than noise. Silence with intention suggests preparation. As whispers of a possible statement began circulating, anticipation spiked. Blogs teased something coming. Fans speculated endlessly about what Tamar might reveal, who she might call out, what she might confirm, what she might finally shut down. The pressure mounted again, but this time, it felt different. This time, Tamar wasn't cornered. She was centered. And that shift made people nervous. Because when someone who has been publicly broken stops reacting and starts choosing, the balance of power changes. The narrative pauses. The audience waits. And everyone who spoke too freely suddenly wonders what receipts might exist on the other side of that silence. Tamar's story was no longer just about rumors. It was about accountability. About who gets to speak, who gets protected, and who pays the price when lines are crossed. As the night ended and the internet refreshed once more, one truth settled in quietly, but unmistakably. This wasn't over. Not even close. Tamar Braxton hadn't disappeared. She had regrouped. And whatever she chooses to say next, or not say at all, will force a reckoning far bigger than the rumors that started it. Because the most dangerous thing in a scandal like this isn't a lie. It's a woman who's done being silent. Before you click away, stop. Because stories like this don't end when the video cuts to black. They end when people decide whether the truth gets buried or brought into the light. What you just heard isn't just celebrity gossip. It's a warning about how fast narratives get twisted, how easily silence gets mistaken for guilt, and how quickly a human being can be turned into content for clicks. If you felt uncomfortable, angry, conflicted, or even protective while watching this, that reaction matters. Algorithms don't push fairness. They push noise. And the only way stories like this don't disappear under the next scandal is when people actively engage. Liking this video tells the platform this conversation deserves to be seen. Commenting tells everyone you're paying attention, not blindly consuming, but thinking critically. Subscribing makes sure you don't miss what happens when the silence breaks and the real decisions get made. Because let's be real, this situation is still unfolding. Screenshots vanish. Posts get deleted. Narratives shift overnight. And when new details surface, whether it's clarification, confrontation, or a line finally drawn, you don't want to hear about it secondhand, stripped of context and twisted beyond recognition. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think the line was crossed? Do you believe accountability is coming, or will this be quietly swept away? Your voice adds weight to this moment. And trust me, people are reading. Hit like. Subscribe. Turn notifications on. Not because it's entertainment, but because staying informed is the only way stories like this don't get rewritten without you. What comes next could change everything.